Hi, I'm Caroline.
And I'm Adrienne.
And this is Scandal Sheets. Hello and welcome to Scandal Sheets, the podcast that explores the scandals and scandalous people of the past. I am your host, Caroline.
And I'm your co-host, Adrienne.
Yeah? You seem to be slightly doubtful about that.
Well, you're in charge, so...
That's right, I'm in charge.
I'm subordinate. Yes.
No.
Maybe a bit less than co. I add important details, though.
This is a democracy.
Okay.
I think.
I think it's more of a dictatorship, Caroline.
Yeah, okay. So, yes, I have strong opinions. Anywho, welcome to episode 3 of season 2. We are going to be discussing Glensheen, which is this fabulous estate in Duluth.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Duluth, Minnesota.
Yeah, and I know I'm a little concerned because what the heck is in Minnesota? Uh-oh.
What's not in Minnesota?
Okay.
Besides my family.
Oh, well, that's important. That's right. I forgot. That's right. You were
my
raised in
family
Minnesota.
And very cool things. Cherries on spoons and really great architecture.
Cherries on spoons?
Parks. There's an art museum downtown called The Walker, and it has a fantastic sculpture garden.
Oh.
And there's a Danish, I think he's Danish. He's either Danish or Swedish. I should know this. Klaus something. Anyway.
Oldham?
No. Famous
Oldenburg.
Sculptor. I know you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, because they mentioned
he did the cherry on the spoon. It's a fountain, and everyone has their picture taken in front of it.
Oh, okay.
But anyway.
Well, I clearly need to go to Duluth then.
That's in Minneapolis, but you do need to go to the Zenith City, Duluth, because it has an aerial lift bridge, which is really interesting, and it's just really sited nicely on Lake Superior, and it's a pretty cool city.
Awesome. So
Klaus Oldenburg.
That's it. I said Oldenburg.
And he's Swedish, not Danish.
Okay.
Yep.
And the only reason I knew that is because he was mentioned in that movie Clueless.
Really?
Yes.
That's really funny. I didn't know that.
And that's like one of my favorite cult movies.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, mine too.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. So Glensheen, before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the guy who commissioned it. His name was Chester Adgate Congdon.
I didn't know what the A stood for.
That's, Adgate, because everybody needs a middle name like Adgate. Yeah. So he was born in 1853 in Rochester, New York, to the Reverend Sylvester Laurentius Congdon.
Wow.
Because
that's a good name.
That is.
Laurentius.
I know. I hope I pronounced that right.
Very regal.
Right. He was a Methodist minister.
Okay.
And Chester's mother was Laura Jane Adgate Congdon.
Okay.
And the Congdons were a very old family in that they were some of the first settlers to the American colonies dating back to the late 1600s. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. They were originally Quakers and settled in Rhode Island, but eventually ended up in New York. The Adgate family was like a lot of New Yorkers in that they had both English and Dutch ancestry. Now, Chester had to learn responsibility at a very young age. He was also very well acquainted with tragedy. Over the course of 1 month in 1868, his father died of pneumonia and 3 of his siblings died of scarlet fever.
Oh, in the same year.
Right. 1 month. 1 month. I can't imagine what the wife and mother, to see your husband and 3 of your children die is just that kind of...
So thankful for good medicine these days.
Absolutely. So Chester was only 14 at the time, so he basically became the man of the house.
Very young.
Taking care of his mother, Laura, and his 2 remaining siblings, Albert and Laura. He attended public school, but also held down a job at a lumberyard to provide money for the family. And when it came time to attend college, he chose Syracuse University since it was close to his family. And speaking of Syracuse, go Syracuse, because I really need them to win their basketball game today so I can advance.
Brackets.
Yeah, in the bracket. That's right. I really bombed and chose Oklahoma, and they got knocked out. You know, I had them going down to like pretty much the Final Four.
I did not do a bracket this year.
I don't usually either, but we decided to have a little friendly office rivalry, and so we all decided to do brackets. So
sure.
Right now I am a big fat loser.
Well, you never know what will happen in subsequent rounds, because that changes
a lot of stuff. Yeah. And there's more points. So anywho, while at Syracuse, Chester met Clara Hesperia Bannister.
Also didn't know her
middle name. Hesperia. I guess it's Latin.
I don't know.
It's very strange.
It is. I like that, though.
Yeah. She was also the daughter of a Methodist minister and had been born in Syracuse, but had moved to San Francisco with her family some years before. And she decided to attend Syracuse University and was one of the first women to be admitted.
That's really impressive.
Yes, very.
Good job, Clara.
She came across the country. I mean, that would have been pretty huge to
absolutely
move away from your family and to go to college of all things in the 1870s. So they met in 1871 when they were both at the school. They both graduated with a Bachelor of Arts, and they chose to delay marriage until Chester could establish himself in a career. Clara ended up moving to Canada to teach art and modern languages at a female college there.
Before she met him, or they knew each other?
And then they decided to split up, basically, until they could get married. So I think it was kind of an engagement, basically. And so Chester actually went to study law at a local law office in Syracuse, because I don't think you had law school then. You would basically intern or apprentice
with a lawyer.
Yeah, and then you would go and sit for the bar, which he was admitted to the New York bar in 1877, but strangely decided that he didn't want to be a lawyer all of a sudden and decided to move to Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin to be a high school principal.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
Midlife crisis? How old was he when this happened?
1877, and he was born in 1853, so...
Well, then it would have been a midlife crisis.
He was 24. I know, right? A third life crisis.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know what there was in Wisconsin, but, I mean, we had Frank Lloyd Wright and all his doings there last week.
We did.
And now Chester's going to Wisconsin.
And this is what year?
In 1877.
I was so way before anything was really happening.
I know, right?
Before the World's Fair, before Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah. So much fun being in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, right?
Cows.
Yeah. That weren't, cheese.
Always cheese.
Yes. So he gave his new career about a year before deciding that living in poverty really kind of sucked. And so he moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, and took a job as a lawyer in a local law firm. He and Clara were still together, but he was barely supporting himself. Plus, he was supporting his mother back in Syracuse as well.
Still. So he was making enough to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he was sending most of it back to his mother, so he knew that there was no way that he could support all three of them if he were to marry Clara right then and there. He actually was very frustrated with the situation, and he wrote to her, quote, "No one realizes better than I that there's no reason why anyone should wish to share my life. And so when I think of how poor my own prospects are, and that there may be some doubts in your own mind, I very naturally think of the wilderness. For I should never have come here had it not been for you, and I would not stay here a week were it not for you. Not that I would go and kill myself, as that would occasion unpleasant notoriety, nor
extreme.
Yes, nor deliberately throw myself away. But I have become something of a gambler in feeling. I would risk everything on a small chance. Go into the territories after money, and in all human probability fail. Here is a slower and safer course. I have seen a good many poor lawyers make money, so maybe I may make some someday." He was very apparently kind of a melancholic personality. So
sounds like that for sure.
To be dropping the S word, that's extreme.
He's sort of blazing a bit of a trail too, because Minnesota is 10 years younger than Wisconsin, and it only became a state in 1858. So for him to be there in the 1870s, it's a very new state and not much happening.
Yeah.
It's kind of the edge of
I'm kind of visualizing like Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
With tumbleweeds in your streets.
Sure.
Boardwalks for sidewalks.
There's definitely some beautiful historic buildings, but I mean, the ones that were built back then would have been wood and came down. So a lot of what the history is in Minnesota is, really 1900. I mean, late 1800s, but anything like 1880, and really at the time he moved there forward.
Right. So Chester was finally able to take a better paid position as an attorney, but his luck really didn't improve until he met William Bilson, who was the U.S. attorney for Minnesota. The two hit it off immediately, and Chester ended up becoming his assistant attorney. So he received a modest raise, which I'm thinking, you're the assistant U.S. attorney for a whole state, and you received a modest raise. But that was enough for him to tell Clara to start planning a wedding. He still ended up borrowing some money to facilitate the marriage, but Clara and Chester were finally wed in 1881, so 10 years after they met, which is some dedication right there, I think. Now, the two settled in St. Paul and immediately started a family, of course. Their first child, a son named William, was born in 1882. A second son named Edward was born in 1885, and their first daughter, Marjorie, followed in 1887. Two more children, Helen and John, joined the family in 1889 and 1891. So
that's 6?
5 kids in 10 years of marriage. So making up for lost time, I guess. In 1892, Chester, Clara, and their 5 children moved to Duluth, Minnesota, the big happening town of Duluth. The Zenith City.
The Zenith City. Mm-hmm.
Why is it called that?
Of course, you had to ask that.
You don't know.
Zenith is the top, right? It's the
mountain. Zenith.
Or
mountain.
Is it the head of Lake Superior? Maybe that's why it's the zenith of Lake Superior.
Oh,
I don't know.
The beginning.
I can find out.
The top. Yes, that kind of makes sense.
It was first coined the Zenith City in the 1800s. Dr. Thomas Foster produced Duluth's first newspaper, the Minnesotian, gave a grand oration during which he called Duluth the Zenith City. It was an Independence Day picnic on Minnesota Point, which is the point that sort of juts out into Lake Superior. So somebody just said it in a speech.
Yeah. Okay, that works. They're in Duluth, and Chester ends up starting a new law firm with his old boss, William Bilson, and they actually did pretty well together, but Chester wasn't totally devoted to the law. He began investing in some commercial, agriculture, and industrial enterprises, and ended up being pretty pivotal in the development of iron and copper mining. So things were looking up for the Congdons, but things took a sudden tragic turn in 1893 when their youngest son, John, died of scarlet fever. Which is really, I can't get over this because I had scarlet fever when I was like 7.
I think I did too, but I was much younger though.
Yeah.
I think I was like 2 or 3.
So in less than 100 years, basically, it's turned into something that's completely curable. Mm-hmm. It kind of blows the mind. It makes you rethink about time traveling.
It does.
So the family rebounded a bit when their 6th child, who was a 3rd daughter, Elizabeth, she was born in 1894. 2 more additions would round out the Congdon family. Clara's nephew, Alfred, would come to live with the family after he was orphaned, and then Clara would give birth to the couple's last child, Robert, in 1898. So by then, though, like the oldest, of course, were already kind of headed towards college and stuff.
Yes.
So it's always find it interesting how those families, like big families like that, they always end up being... there being a big gap between the oldest and the youngest.